The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to Complete's live webinar, Higher Profits for You and Better Accounts Payable Service for Your Clients. Before we start today's session, please allow me to guide you through a few navigation pointers about the GoToWebinar service. To ensure the best audio quality possible, everyone except for our panelists is muted. You may ask questions at any time by typing them in the Questions tab located in the control panel to the right of your screen. There will be time allocated at the end of this webinar to respond to your questions. This session is being recorded and will be made available to you after the webinar session has closed. Please note that you can find Complete on Twitter at CompleteP2P, and we encourage you to tweet during today's webinar using the hashtag #CompleteLive. My name's James and I will be your presenter today. I'm part of iComplete's commercial team and will be happy to respond to any questions you may have. So please feel free to send them through the chat during this demo. If you have any questions after the webinar, you can tweet me at JamesVeer. I'd like to start with a brief overview of what you're currently seeing with regards to invoice processing for your clients, and ultimately how you will benefit from utilizing iComplete Invoice AP automation. If you do have any question as we go through, please do put them in the chat box and I can pick these up at the end of the session. So, right now the invoices are received by your client. They are received in the mail or received via email and then printed. Now, 60 to 70% of those invoices are now being received via email as a PDF, so already counterproductive action is taken and these invoices are printed. You then receive a shoebox of paper invoices. This might be once a week, but more than likely it's once a month or even just once at the end of the year. This is then scanned using a variety of different products. Most commonly, OCR is used. Whilst OCR did take the first step to automation in our industry, it can now be slow to process and also inaccurate. If your client uses an online accounting system, it will most likely post into the accounting system. If not, then the likelihood is you are exporting an Excel file and then importing it in. After that, you will go and file the invoice. Whether it was stored digitally or in a filing cabinet, it is now potentially difficult to find this invoice again, risking a long and painful audit process. You will then produce a month-end report for that client, which are, through no fault of your own, at least 2 to 3 weeks out of date. With MTD coming in, this will be yet another thing to consider moving forward, so processes will have to change. So here is what we've just established you see at the moment. Yet for the vast majority of your clients, they likely have some kind of internal process that occurs before you receive the invoice. We're not guessing either. This is a fact, and I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that we have spoken to countless accountants who have no idea what is happening before they receive the invoice. So what is it that you're not seeing? Well, we can tell you that if they have a diligent process, then this is what is happening. They will receive the invoice 60% of the time via email, which they are printing off. They will also receive invoices by the post. It is then entered into some kind of invoice register or daybook, so they know they've received it. Any analysis coding is added manually to the invoice. Then an approval process needs to be decided. Someone will then sort all the invoices by approver. They are then put on the desk of this particular approver. The process is slow. They can get lost. If there are any queries, they will need to be manually returned. And the risk of duplication is high at this stage, as they may have lots to approve and no memory of what they have or haven't seen before. And it's from here they will send the invoices to you, the accountant. This is the first point of visibility of this spend. The invoices you receive should be, or could be, 2 to 3 weeks old. And as we know with growing businesses, the ability to pay suppliers on time to improve relationships, ultimately payment terms and credit accounts is vital. When you break down the AP process into components, it falls into 2 activities. The pure labor, which delivers no value and just adds cost to the process, and knowledge, an individual's experience and understanding which is required to make a decision or to take an appropriate action. Automation is about removing the labor content. And we also have AI and machine learning, which is about automating and defaulting the repetitive tasks. For example, checking the invoice banking information against the information in your accounting software, or defaulting of the GL codes so it happens automatically every single time. It is in this combination of automating labor and the knowledge activities that you can give such a high productivity. But it is also the delivery of real-time visibility of all the financial information that transforms the value automation delivers, not only to every organization, but also to their accountants that provide that service to them. So now I'd like to show you what the iComplete invoice process looks like. PDF invoices are emailed in either direct from the suppliers or forwarded straight from the client's email into your e-invoicing portal. The portal then captures the data from the invoice, providing you with a validated header and line information within your iComplete system. Now, we understand that 60 to 80% of all invoices go to the same account code, the same VAT code and approver. This information can be defaulted, so you don't have to repeat your actions each time you receive an invoice from that supplier. This means that you can automate the whole process and post the approved transactions into your accounting system with little to zero human touch. Now, of course, we understand that some suppliers will send paper invoices in, and in this case, you can scan them in and email to the portal the exact same way. This is now the point where everyone can see the invoice, both the client and you as the accountant. So the steps that we are eliminating from this or from your existing process: no longer will the client need to print out the invoices and send to you via email. Keying into an invoice register becomes redundant. With 60 to 80% of invoices now having default account coding and approval processes, the decision making required is minimized, leaving you to handle only the exceptions. No longer will the client need to distribute the invoices manually to the approvers, and all the tracking issues around paper invoices are eliminated. Manually keying the invoice into the accounting system will now become a thing of the past, and because all invoices are stored and tracked, there is no need to file the paper anymore. And those out-of-date month-end reports will be no more, as your clients can access real-time information. So ultimately, automation powered by AI and machine learning removes all of the labor, but could also give you 60 to 80% knowledge requirement through defaulting. If the business has a very poor capture and approval process, they can save at least 65% of all the work. And if they have a good process, then up to 90% productivity gains can be achieved. So iComplete is more than AP automation. It's about giving real-time financial visibility to everyone that needs to know, delivering fully compliant best practice process, saving both time and money. Taking that into account, your process can be as simple as this. PDF invoice received and defaulted. Sent directly to the appropriate approver for them to view online or on the mobile application. And on approval, posted straight into your accounting software. This gives you real-time access to invoice information wherever it is in the process and one single view of the truth. It's going to remove the paper and increase visibility, reduce the level of human interaction and speed up the entire process, access essential information in real time with our comprehensive dashboards and reporting. This gives you and your client 100% paperless process. So that was just a bit of a background on Complete as a company and specifically the invoice management process. So what I'll do now is jump straight into the demonstration of the product itself. So I'm going to go first of all and log in as I would as the client. So the first stuff that we're going to chat about is what the client will see and the processing that goes through that. So as I log on, this is exactly what the sort of the finance person within my client's organization would look at. So it's an administration view for them to be able to do everything. So I can see here that I've got all access to the different tabs, and I can also see below that my e-invoicing email address. And essentially what this is the email address that's associated with my account where I will send the invoices in for processing. This email address can either be given directly to my suppliers, so completely bypass the organization and send them straight in for processing, or it can even be forwarded on from their own emails. To the top right, I've got a drop down here with my company name. Now, if any of your clients have multi-tenants or multi-entities, what they can do is set up all their organizations and switch in between them all. Next to that, I've got my little question mark button giving me, first of all, a page guide. So your clients are going to be able to have a little sort of step-by-step guide of exactly what they're seeing on screen. And below that, we've also got our support button. And if we click on that one, it's going to take us to the iComplete knowledge base, or iClick, which is going to give them how-to videos and how-to guides of how to operate the system. To start, I just want to go into the configuration tab and start with the workflows. So within each organization, they can set up their own workflows, or you as the accountant can set up the workflows for them. In this particular example, I have set up each workflow as department. So if I go ahead here and click on my IT department workflow, it's going to break the workflow down for me. So this is the approval chain that it needs to go through. So I've called it here the workflow name, IT department, and the abbreviated name, which will show up at the bottom of the invoice. And I can see here that there are two positions for this particular approval chain. So the first one, if I click on it, expands. I can see here I've got my IT manager, Rory, within here. And all he needs to do is go ahead and approve that if it comes to this particular stage. Now, say for example, within this particular department, there might be two people that could approve this invoice. So what I can do, if I click down on my drop down here and bring up all the users I have added into my organization, if I press add, what this has now done is turn this particular position into an approval group, meaning that the invoice will be sent to both of these users, with only one of them needing to approve it to send it off to the next stage. The next step I've labeled as senior management, and I've got my managing director, Phil, in here. However, I don't want to worry Phil with sort of every invoice that comes into this particular workflow. However, I do want him to see invoices with a certain net value. So what I've done is set a criteria to say if an invoice is over £1,000, come to this particular position. So what will happen if it's under £1,000, it will go to the IT department and then be posted into my accounting software. If it's over, IT department first, and then onto my MD, Phil. This is kind of the base of all the configuration criteria that I can set. There are other options, including codes and descriptions, that we can set further analysis on as well. All these are very dynamic, so I can have as many steps as I want, and I can even sort of flip and change where each one of them is. So maybe I do want to see my MD to see them before it goes to the IT department. So very dynamic in that sense. You can have as many workflows as each client needs, and as many steps as well. If I go back into my main screen, what I want to do is jump into my Manage Invoices screen, which is where sort of the processing happens end to end. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is the view that an internal IT person would have of your client's view. So I just want to go through and explain all the tabs before we get started. So the unprocessed tab or tray is where invoices will come for the very first time after being processed. So either that can be coded and ready for coding by yourselves as the accountant or the internal finance person. The submitted tray is an AP operator tray. So someone who in finance who wants to be able to see exactly where each invoice is within the approval chain. So I can see here that this particular invoice, the next approver is Katrina. Awaiting approval is the actual invoices that are requiring this particular user's approval, and then approved and denied speak for themselves. If I jump back into my unprocessed tray, I can see here that every line is an invoice, and it's giving me a nice snapshot of that particular invoice. So I can see the date it was received, the invoice date, the payment due date, our reference number, who the supplier is, the invoice number from the supplier, and the net, the VAT, and the gross of the header information. So if I go ahead and click on the top one there from Crown Venue Catering, what that's going to do is drill down into the information that's been extracted off the invoice. So the top left, the header information, who the supplier is, and the total of the invoice. And below that, we are also matching the bank details with the ones that are on the invoice with the ones that have been stored in the accounting software. So making sure that this is not a fraudulent invoice and taking one step in sort of fraud protection and making sure that we can actually go ahead and pay this invoice. Below that, it's extracted 5 lines off the invoice. So that's including the item description and the unit cost of this particular line. And the reason why every line is sort of in this red pink color is because it's requiring review. It needs some kind of action before I can send it off for approval. And if I hover over here, it's asking me that I need to add an account code and a department for every single line on this invoice. Now, as I said before in the presentation, that for the majority of invoices, all the coding is going to be the same for every single line. So I've got this little quick actions button here. And if I click on the pre-fill the missing account code, it's giving me this drop down of all the accounting codes that have been extracted from my finance system. And let's say for this one, I want to add it to refreshments. Click on this little tick box, press OK. It has now added refreshments code to every single one of these lines. If I do this again for department, because my particular organization uses department, I've got all my departments here in my drop down. Let's add Doncaster this time for this particular example. All the red has now disappeared, and it is essentially now ready to send off for approval. So I've got all my approval workflows down here. However, that's not going to be able to be the case every time. So if I click on edit, it's going to, first of all, on the left-hand side, drill down into the invoice image that we extracted the information off, including any supporting documentation that came along with that invoice. So in this case, it's just the email address or the email that came from the supplier. but this could include delivery notes, payment information, anything that's sent with the invoice we will include in the supporting documentation. So again, bringing back to that one version of the truth, everything stored in one place. To the right-hand side, I've got now a breakdown of this invoice, so the header and every single line on the invoice. So from here, I could code each line separately. So if your clients do need line level analysis, you will be able to sort of code each line with an account code and a department. So if I go ahead now and change, say the department is actually for London for line 2, press save, that's now been updated. So you can, or your clients can sort of code line by line, giving them that sort of really good line level analysis. Now, if I jump back into my header information, what I also wanted to touch on is the ability to default information for suppliers. So as I said in my presentation, for anywhere from 50 to 80% of invoices, they're always going to have the same codes. So they're always going to be coded the same way. So what I'm saying here is that every time I receive an invoice from Crown Venue Catering, set this as the account code or the currency code or any kind of other analysis items that your client needs. And even default the workflow. So every time I receive one from Crown Venue Catering, send it to this workflow. And this is where we can really get up to that 90% productivity gains. By being able an invoice will come in, be fully coded, sent directly to the approver, they approve it, it will post into the accounting software. So really getting to that 90% productivity gains. In this case, I'm not going to default any of the information, and let's go ahead and send it to my marketing department. What that's going to do now is send it off and bring me onto the next invoice within my tray. So if you do have, or you or your client do have a sort of a large tray worth of invoices, it's just going to bring you onto the next one. So if I go ahead and log off as my sort of finance user and log in as my approval user, when I sent that off for approval, it triggered 2 types of notifications. The first one being an email, so an email that will go to Sonia to say they've got something to approve. And if they've downloaded our mobile application, it will send off a mobile app to say that they've got something to approve. So they can approve invoices on the go on their mobile app. As you can see here, the screen has changed quite a bit with just my approver. So only sort of seeing the information that they are required to see. And if I go ahead now and click on the Manage Invoices tab, that's going to drill down into my view as an approver, and it's giving me only the invoices that are requiring my approval and the invoices that I have approved and denied. Here's the example that we processed before from Crown Venue Catering. If I click on that one, I'm going to see the same information that I saw before, so all the information that has been extracted. But this time, if I click on Documents and Timeline, I'm again going to see the invoice, but I'm going to see the full approval timeline. So I can see here that it was submitted by this particular user, so Katrina in this case, and I can see here that I'm the only approver of this invoice. If there was another approver, there'd be an arrow and another approval step. So giving them really good information about what's happening with the invoice. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and approve it, but you can send it under query by pressing deny and then adding a comment. So you can sort of send it back to the finance or the accountant user to say, there's something wrong with it. So if I press approve, the invoice has now been fully approved, and within about 30 seconds, it will be posted into my accounting software and bring me back a journal number. So that's the full end-to-end process very simply. Well, the way that we can set up the workflows and the way that we can set up the defaulting can be extremely complex or very, very simple. It's really up to yourselves and your clients. If I log it off now and log back into my sort of client's internal finance user, the system itself acts as a bit of a document management tool. So the ability to see invoices quickly and easily is very easy. So if I jump into my approved tray, I've got all the invoices that have ever come through the system. And what I've got within each one of these columns is this little filter tab, which is very Excel-like. So maybe I want to see all the invoices that I've processed from Regis Property Management. So if I put Regis in there, it's going to filter this list and bring me up all the supplier or all the records from Regis Property Management. I can also filter, let's say I'm trying to find a particular invoice and the invoice ends in 1882. If I click on that one, it's going to then drill through all the information and bring me up the invoice that I need to query. If I click on it, I'm going to see the same information I saw before. And if I click this time on Documents and Timeline, I'm going to see the full audit trail of what happened to this invoice. So I can see here it was processed by this user. It was approved by this other user. It was then posted on this date and time to my accounting software, and it was this journal number. And I can also see the payment status of it. So I can see here that this particular invoice was paid on this date at this time by this accounting software user. So giving them the full end-to-end trail of exactly what happened, including the payment information. So what your client's going to be able to receive now is their approvers not hassling them about exactly what's happening or has this invoice been paid. They can go and check it themselves. The last thing I want to touch on from a client perspective is the reporting pack. So for us, we were collecting all of this data. We didn't kind of want to just chuck it into the accounting software and leave it there. So this is the very first version of our reporting pack. They're split into two different types of reports: activity-based, so things like invoices per day, invoices pending approval, and such. And the second half is the financial reports. And these are the really handy ones for your client. The one I want to show today is the supplier spend report. So for the majority of finance people and approvers, they don't really know exactly what they're spending per supplier. So what we can do is drill down on the information. So let's go ahead and click on Crown Venue Catering. And maybe I want to see what I've spent with this particular supplier over the last 3 months. What this is presenting to me is a really easy to read line graph that's giving me a week by week breakdown of exactly what I've spent with Crown Venue Catering. It's also giving me what I've spent with them this month, what I've spent for the last year, and what I've actually spent all time being on this system. The great thing about every single one of our reports, you can click on any part of it and it will drill down to exactly what that number makes up. So I can see here that £253.41 makes up these two invoices. And from here, I can even drill all the way down into the invoice image. Throughout all of these, you can export them to PDF or Excel. So, plug them into any existing reports they've got into Excel. And obviously you can see the invoice image from here as well. So that's a little bit of a breakdown of what your client's gaining. And I just wanted to touch on kind of the way that you would operate as an accountant. So if I log off now as my user, and let's log into my accountant user. And as you can see here, the views change just a little bit. So I can see here I've got this tab called Client Manager, and that's the thing I want to touch on today. So if I click on the client management side of things, this is where you can manage everything as the accountant. So I can see here that I've got my 2 clients and I can see there that I've assigned 6 users and they've got 4 active users. If I click on Actions, as the accountant, I can log in to every single one of my clients, so in and out of them to do work for them if required. And I can even assign the sort of number of users and things that they need. I've also got some additional functionality like credit utilization, so I can see exactly how many credits that they're processing in each one of them, and give you sort of an idea of how much they're purchasing as well. So it's very easy to set up your clients and get them going. You can do this in many different ways where you set them up for them or you invite them and they can kind of do the setup themselves. So that's really the breakdown of the demonstration. If I jump back now into my presentation just to finish. So to summarize, what's the opportunity and what's the reward for you and your practice? Ultimately, it's a sort of a dog-eat-dog world out there, and you need to do what you can to stand out from the crowd. So every growing business has an invoice approval process. Almost none are compliance best practice. So they're going to be open to fraud and duplicate invoice payments. Cash flow is always at the top of an MD's agenda. Cash requirements reporting within that is going to give them that ability to see that live. Supplier accounts are critical to cash flow growth and critical to enabling sales delivery. The cost of AP administration, that adds no value, and it's simply a better way of working. So the reward, it's the opportunity to re-engage with some of your larger clients. engage with some of the sort of new prospective larger clients, be able to offer a compelling solution to save your client time and resources and deliver sort of real-time information. You're going to be able to increase your productivity and profitability. So service more clients with the same resources, deliver a better service to each one of those clients, deliver ultimately best practice compliance, and stand out from the crowd. Before I wrap up and take some questions, I just want to tell you about a special year-end offer we've got running at the moment. To help sort of elevate the stress of year-end, we're offering a special end of financial year trial of our invoice capture and approval software. So you're going to be able to receive 30 days free, unlimited functionality of the actual software, free all-you-can-eat invoice processing, so you can have as many invoices as you like within that 30 days to process. 2 free training sessions. So you're going to get 2 free online training sessions with our enablement team to sort of help you get set up and show you the functionality and help with in that phase. And then lastly, you're going to get 20% off the first monthly subscription of the trial. So this offer is only going to be till the sort of the year end. So yeah, if you are wanting to sort of look at this in a bit more depth, please get in touch with us and we can set up the trial. So I'll just quickly see if we've got any questions within the question box. Okay, so we've got a question here about what versions of Sage that we integrate with. So currently at the moment, we're integrating with Sage 50 and Sage 200. With Sage 50, we are integrating with, I think, the latest one and then all the way to 2016, both on-site and Sage 50C. And Sage 200, we integrate with the latest version and the one before that as well. And we are definitely expanding on that with the Sage Business Cloud to follow. And then sort of apart from that, sort of adding more integrations on as well. We have one more question here. Great question. So we've got another question saying here, if any of the approvers are off sick or away, how easy is to redirect the invoice? So that's a great question. Within you setting up the users, there's a thing called nominee. And a nominee function gives either the user or the accountant the ability to set someone else to approve their invoices. So while they're away, it will just be forwarded on to a different user. I've got another question saying, when I say year end, do you mean end of March? No, we mean end of April. But you have to start the trial before the end of March. So as long as you're starting the trial before the end of March, then you'll be able to receive the offer. There's another question. Can we match an invoice to a purchase order? Another great question. At the moment, no. This is just purely invoice capture and automation. However, we are very, very close to releasing our purchase order module. So that will give you the ability to, or your client's ability rather, to raise requisitions, send them off for approval, be presented with their budgets and things like that. And then once the invoice comes in, it will match with the purchase order within our software and post into the accounting software. So giving you really the full purchase to pay solution. That is due for release before the end of April. And we're more than happy to sort of take on any beta customers that are really interested in that for any of their clients. Another question here, how does iComplete know an invoice is paid? So with the two-way integration, not only are we obviously posting the invoices to the accounting software, but we are also sucking the information back in. So what we're doing is looking at all the transactions overnight that have been posted and then bringing back the payment information. So it is a two-way integration. And last question. Last question is, what's the current cost per month and do you offer a partner discount? Another great question. So our pricing is split into 2 different halves. It's a monthly or annual cost based on users, and this can be, the users can be distributed across all your clients, and then you need to buy transaction credits. And the credits, again, can be distributed across all your clients, and and they can be bought in bundles. So I suppose that the more you buy, the more you save. And I can, if sort of anyone's interested in getting more in-depth information on the pricing, my email is down there. So please email me, and we can discuss the pricing. In terms of there being a partner discount, absolutely, accountants receive 20% off the list prices, and then you can obviously on-charge your client the full price. So you are getting sort of some financial benefit from there as well. So if you've got any further questions, as I said, please send your questions to the email address on your screen. And if you submitted any questions during the webinar, we'll be sure to get back to you sort of in the coming days. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar is now concluded.